Chapter 5. Forbidden Knowledge. May 18, 2010. Months had passed since that strange day in Ohio. Thomas had left the professor's home not long after Brett had steered the conversation toward time travel. Thomas considered himself an open-minded person. Many would go as far as to say he was a dreamer. But what Brett was implying was simply a bridge too far. As Thomas politely but uncomfortably began gathering the things Bert Crane had prepared for him, focusing primarily on those which related to his schematic, Brett had followed him like a dog ready for a treat, desperately attempting to change his mind. "Tom, I get it. You don't have to believe any of this, but I need you to promise me one thing before you leave." Thomas swung open the front door, briefcase in hand, and looked back, silently giving permission for Brett to have his final say. "You have to take what I've given you, use it to finish the device, and immediately contact my father when you do. It's the only purpose of our meeting today." Thomas had shaken his head and left. He'd heard nothing from Brett or his father since. He actually had attempted to contact Bert twice over the last 2 months, but he received no response to his email. He'd even had his mother call and leave a voicemail. Still nothing. Why were these two men being so cryptic and then mysteriously falling off the face of the earth? What irritated Thomas most was Brett's final admonition to keep working and finish the device, as if there was anything else. The device was Thomas's life at this point. It consumed him. He didn't need to be reminded to work on it. He didn't need some silly story about his childhood home or time travel to work on it. He was going to work on it, regardless of Brett or Bert Crane, not because he felt any responsibility to them, but because working on it was all he ever did. Which is why, when he did finally finish the device on May 18, 2010, at precisely 9:13 p.m., he wasn't sure exactly what to do first. He would need to go to the university laboratory to run tests, of course, but he had the numbers in front of him. He knew they were right, and he knew it would work. It felt to him like the first day of summer vacation as a child, amplified by 10,000. You work endlessly in the hopes of reaching a day that seems like it will never come, and then out of nowhere it's here and you don't even know what to do with it. There were 50 phone calls he could make. Calls he should make. People at the university, his family, financial backers. Every one of them would want to know that Thomas Redmond finally did it. And everyone who helped him along the way was going to be famous. And they were going to be famous. Maybe not Edison famous, but famous in the sense that this device would forever change how energy was produced and delivered. His name might not match the scientific greats of history, but his bank account surely would. For the first time in his life, Thomas Redmond was going to be rich. So it bothered him a great deal that all he could think about in what should have been an utterly brilliant moment of victory in his life was Bert and Brett Crane. And that's when he heard a knock at the front door. Since graduating from university, Thomas had lived in one of his Uncle Frank's many rental properties. It was a small country house just west of Monroe, recently redone. It was a far nicer setup for Thomas than the typical options for recent college grads, if only in that it wasn't a tiny apartment. It had a large basement he could work in, and his mom was close enough with the landlord that rent was more of an option than a requirement. After debating for a moment whether he should answer the door or just wait until the visitor left, Thomas covered his work and moved slowly up the stair. When he reached the door, he opened it without checking first who it was, not sure what to expect. Nothing. There was no one there. Confused, Thomas stepped out onto the dimly lit porch and looked in every direction. Apart from the gentle swaying of newly planted corn in a nearby field and the steady drone of crickets, there was nothing to be seen or heard. It wasn't until he attempted to re-enter the house that he noticed a small envelope leaning gently against the doorframe. It hadn't been there before, he was certain of that. Whoever had knocked had left it. Entering the kitchen, Thomas sat at the kitchen island in the lone chair of the otherwise unfurnished room and examined the envelope. It was unmarked on its exterior except for a strange seal that looked far older than the envelope itself. Thomas opened the envelope, removed the 2 sheets of paper it contained, and began to read what could only be described as a good old-fashioned, double-sided, handwritten letter, signed elaborately at its conclusion by Professor Bert Crane. Thomas, I apologize that I could not come to you in person. I also apologize for the strange delivery of this correspondence and the mystery surrounding. I could explain the incidents and their necessity, but it would take some time, and I doubt I could do the explanation justice in a letter. Quickly, I will introduce myself. My name is Bert Crane. I was your father's teacher, and more importantly, his friend. You met my son Brett a few months ago at my home in Ohio. He had been corresponding with your mother using my email address. I am sorry I haven't returned your calls. I've been horribly busy with this nonsense in ways you cannot yet comprehend. For the sake of speed, I must be brief. By the time you read this letter, the pace of events will already be hastening. I desperately wish I could have given you more time and explanation, but just like you're about to be, I was forced to make immediate decisions based on insufficient information. I will do my best to boil everything I need to tell you down to a few points. 1. I know you have finished your device, and I know you have already named it, the Antaeus. How I know this is irrelevant. What is relevant is that the Antaeus has applications beyond your wildest dreams, and if you do not make the right choices within the next 48 hours, the consequences will be impossible to predict. Other than that, they will be disastrous. 2. You need to know that I have always blamed myself for your father's mental decline and subsequent death. I know this is strange to mention now, but it will be important for you. I pushed your father down the path he ultimately took, and despite his successes, I have never forgiven myself for the destination it led him to. Now prepare yourself, because this is where the letter goes off the rails. I believe we can save your father from that path, but doing so is not the reason you need to do what I'm about to ask you to do. 3. I am in a great deal of personal danger. You and I have become involved in matters beyond the reality we know. I need you to remember, through all of what is to come, one concept. When humans partake in forbidden knowledge, entities become involved. Some of these entities are human, some are natural, and some are not natural. I fear your reading of this letter and my own doom are inextricably linked. I am and have been doing everything I can to reach you, but I'm afraid I've already failed. If that is true, you're going to have to make some choices without my guidance that will certainly seem insane to you. Thomas, it boils down to this. You must take the Antaeus to the lilac bush in Petersburg as soon as possible. I know it sounds insane, but the fate of your family depends on it. If I had my preference, you would go the moment you finish reading this letter. But if that is too soon, make preparations and go within 12 hours at the latest. Pack light, but plan for a long stay. I've sketched a diagram below to aid you with the Antaeus when you reach the tunnel. There are a few other minor components you will need to bring, all of which I am certain you already have readily available. You will then need to connect the Antaeus to the natural conductors at the tunnel's entrance as shown. It's a far easier task than what you have accomplished so far, and I'm certain you will have no issues with it once you are there. You've already done the hard work. Now it's just a leap of faith. That's it. That's all I have. Please, Thomas, even if it's only to prove to yourself once and for all that old Bert Crane is a lunatic, you must go to Petersburg immediately. Don't delay. Until we meet again, Bert Crane. Thomas set the letter down, put both elbows on the table, ran his hands through his hair, and stared at it in a daze. He felt his cell phone vibrate in his pocket. He took it out and saw a single text from his mother. Just saw on Facebook, Bert Crane found dead this morning. Heart attack. Lovely man. Funeral arrangements pending.